Cell theory is a scientific theory that states that all living organisms are made out of cells. Cell theory has three different postulates, and they are that the cell is the basic unit of life, all living organisms are made out of cells, and all cells come from pre-existing cells. In this video, we will be discussing the history and the things that came into factor when discovering cell theory as a theory itself.
In the Netherlands, at the 60s, Anton von Leeuwenhoek started using a version of a microscope he invented on his own, and so one day, out of curiosity, he decided to look at the dental scrapings of his teeth. When he did so, he discovered a little moving creatures, and because he thought these animals looked like animals, he decided to name them animalcules, which we now know today as bacteria. Around the same time, and Robert Hooke also looked at something with a microscope, the shaving of fine cork, and what he saw was little remnants of plant cells from the wood. And similarly, other scientists look at different plants and animals. They noticed that in different animals had similar cells now. This discovery developed the first postulate of cell theory, and that was, the cell is the basic unit of life.
Now, let's discuss the second postulate. We move fast forward to the 1830s. A botanist by the name of Matthias Schleiden looked at a different assortment of cells and realized that no matter what the plant is, they all had the same microscopic structure that Robert Hooke had described centuries ago. Now, another scientist by the name of Theodor Schwann did the same thing, but instead of plants, he looked at different animal nervous systems and discovered that no matter what the animal are, their nerves have all have the same microscopic structure. Now, in a party at 1837, Schleiden and Schwann met at a party and began discussing their work, and they both discovered that the second postulate of cell theory, and that is all organisms are made of cell. Now, let's move on to the third postulate.
However, it wasn't really clear where the bacteria came from, and the predominant theory at the time was abiogenesis, or the theory of spontaneous generation. In this theory, they believed that there was an unknown substance in the air that would combine with non-living organisms like the ground, and from that it would produce life or spontaneous generation of life. And so a French scientist, Louis Pasteur, in the 1860s did the swan neck battle experiment that disapproved the theory of spontaneous generation. In this experiment, Louis had a flask with a swan neck and one without it, and both were filled with broth that were sterilized via boiling. Pasteur made this experiment because he believed that instead of abiogenesis, some bacteria got into the broth because the air carried it. So in this experiment, he was still allowing air to enter the flask, or allow this unknown substance in abiogenesis to enter the flask. But if there were any microorganisms in the air, they would caught by the swan neck of the flask, and who would have thought there was no cell growth in broth because of the swan neck. And so with this experiment, abiogenesis was disproven, and the third established the third postulate of cell theory, that all cells came from pre-existing cells.
In this video, we discuss the history and development of cell theory to its contributors like Anton von Leeuwenhoek, Schleiden and Schwann, and finally Louis Pasteur's swan neck experiment that eventually disproved abiogenesis, or spontaneous generation, that helped in the proving of the third postulate of cell theory. Now, to recap, the three postulates of cell theory are as follows. The first one is, cell is the basic unit of life. The second is, all living organisms are made out of cells. And finally, the postulate that Louis Pasteur proved and subsequently disproved the theory of abiogenesis, as it is that all cells came from pre-existing cells through cell purification. So thank you for watching this video, and I hope you understand cell theory more